Welcome to Wisdom Inspired, a podcast designed to help high achievers to eliminate burnout and overwhelm. Now let's prepare to open our hearts, our minds, and our notebooks to receive today's wisdom. It's actually been a very, very good weekend, but I have been totally inspired, and you'll see as we, listen to what I believe God is saying to us on today. So I want you to go back to your first kiss, your first love. Now, don't worry, I'm not going to go Betty Wright on you. But I want you to think about your first job, maybe your first paycheck, even your first encounter with Jesus, your salvific experience. I remember mine. I remember where I was. I remember the entire experience. I remember, exactly what happened and how God spoke to me. And I remember that experience and God's presence in my life. So that is what our topic is going to be about. Back to first. Okay? Back to first. I want y'all to stay with me, okay? So there's a principle that's called the law of first mention. Some people use this for studying the Bible, and it's something that I personally found very useful in my study. So the law of first mention says that to understand a particular word or a doctrine or a theme, to go and find the first place where it's mentioned in Scripture, and you'll get a better understanding of what that means throughout Scripture. And so it's definitely a principle and something that you may want to incorporate in your study. And so I thought that, okay, what better way to jump on this call and to start out with the first book of the Bible, right? The first book, Genesis, the first verse, first chapter, and the first verse. And it says, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And what I noticed there was that the first thing that he says about himself is that he's a creator. We know God as the creator, right? But the first thing he tells us about himself is that he is a creator. And this is important because it speaks to the law of first mention, right? And so when you look at Genesis, you'll discover that it's filled with first mentions, okay, including the foundations and doctrines and concepts such as paradise. When you look at Genesis 2 and 8, he talks about paradise. He describes paradise in the Garden of Eden. He talks about the word covenant. It's first mentioned in Genesis 6 and 18. And so here he talks about the fact that he is a creator. He even lays out the creation process that he uses. He speaks and things come into being that were not even there before. There's nothing in existence that comes into existence until God causes it to come into existence. That's who God is. He's the creator, right? But he doesn't stop there. Again, he lays out the entire process of what he did. He outlines his creation process. He even puts it into three primary categories. He created creation, which was the universe, the earth, seas, etc. He creates creatures, the animals, the fowls in the air, birds, bugs, roaches, whatever. Then he creates creatures, which is us. Creators, which is us. right? Now, when we talk about creators, we're not talking about creators in the sense of us being able to create something from nothing, right? We create from what has already been created by God. Okay? First mention. The other thing that I saw was that he demonstrates to us that he is a God of order. He gives us a blueprint in his creation process. Again, categories. He systemized. He shows us his process and even shows us how there are theme days in his process to get things done in an orderly fashion. Okay? Then he shows us the fact that he's a God of purpose. He gives us purpose. In everything that he creates, he gives purpose to it. One example, verse 14, when he says, "And God said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven." Why is that? To divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and for years, and let them be for lights in the firmament of the heaven, to give light upon the earth. And it was so. So you may be saying, okay, where in the world are you going with this, right? What am I saying? So what I'm saying is that he's a creator. He is our creator, but he creates. And he didn't just share this just because he didn't have anything else to say, right? It was the first thing he shared about himself. And so when we are given ideas and we're creating programs and services and products and all of that stuff from what he has created, there is a blueprint there, right? There are principles, there's guidelines that we can apply in our creation process. And we can do those things in an orderly fashion. We can be productive. We don't have to be all over the place because God is a God of order. And remember, even in that he says that we are created in his image. And as his people, as those of us who are created in his image, right? All of his creation. But we as his people, we have full access to him, right? When we do things according to his plan and how the kingdom operates, and you've heard me say this before, we're on the winning side. And everything that he's created was done in an orderly fashion and was given purpose. Creation has its purpose. Creatures have their purpose. And as creators, we have a purpose. I can't serve creation's purpose, and creation can't serve my purpose. I can't be a tree, and a tree can't be me. I can't serve the purpose for which God created creatures, nor can creatures serve the purpose for what I was created to do. And so, remember I said that it's just been an amazing weekend because yesterday I attended virtual church as I normally do on Sundays. And as God would have it, my pastor was talking on the topic of meaningful success. And I'm saying all this because there's so much that I want to say that I just really got to give you just a snapshot, right? So, but as I was listening to him, a couple of things that stood out to me in the topic of meaningful success, a couple of things that stood out to me. One of the things that he talked about was staying in your spiritual lane. Staying in your spiritual lane. Remember that you were chosen to do what God chose you to do. So it is important that you stay in that lane. He said that there is a calling that's attached to being chosen. So be careful about walking in the shoes of someone else's calling. He didn't call you to do what someone else was called to do. He called you to do what he called you to do. And that there's satisfaction that comes from staying in your lane and fulfilling that calling, right? And so we experience his very best when we embrace the calling that God has for us so that we can live out his purpose for which we were created. And when we move out our spiritual lane that God has called us to stay in and step into the shoes of someone else's calling, we're saying to God, like, hey, you made a mistake. This is not what you called me to do. It's like a slap in the face. You're saying that, no, this is not the purpose that you gave me, right? That's what you're doing when you step into someone else's calling. And guess what? You'll never be happy. You'll never be satisfied. You'll never be fulfilled when you are stepping out of your spiritual lane. And I don't know about you, but I know life is too short to not be fulfilled and not have some sense of satisfaction and spend time walking in someone else's calling. Okay? And I think that Tony Evans says it best, because I was listening to him as well. He said, you know that you're doing what you're called to do because there is a sweet spot at the intersection of passion, ability, capacity, personality, and experiences. So, I hope today's wisdom has inspired you, like it inspired me. To go back to your first. Go back to your first encounter. Go back to where God told you what he called you to do, right? Because you have an experience with him, and it plays out in life, in different areas of your life. But we all have a purpose and an assignment that God has specifically called us to do. So go back to your first. I hope today's wisdom has inspired you. Remember to go to wisdominspired.net for the previous episodes, subscribe, and leave us a review. With that said, meet us back on the line.
I hope you enjoyed the episode of Wisdom Inspired that was brought to you by the AAC Co-working Community, a virtual community designed to support female entrepreneurs, business owners, and freelance professionals. For more, go to wisdominspired.net.